Thank you for inviting me to the Rajagiri Roundtable Conference. To start with the answer, uh, I'll start with a disclaimer that there is no clear answer to it. But yes, I'll give you some pointers into it. We will start with the understanding of language first of all. The first and the foremost problem or the conundrum that we are faced with is that language teaching or language learning is not just teaching the language. Every subject is using the language in order to make sense to the students. That is a primary problem of understanding in the entire curriculum. Teachers would mostly pay attention to a certain or a specific language, be it the glorified foreign language or be it the local language. The problem is that we only take care of a language which would hold some sort of social power or prestige. So I'm starting with the social linguistic side of it or the social political side of it. Now, when we talk about states like Chhattisgarh, where they have a fully functional language like Chhattisgarhi, uh, are we using the language to teach the students in the first place? No, we are not. In spite of Chhattisgarhi being an officially accepted language, what we are doing is teaching them with Hindi, where their competence in speaking or understanding Hindi is not as much as of Chhattisgarhi. These are all children, like millions of children, not thousands, but millions of children speaking Chhattisgarhi as a language. In spite of which, they are now being forced to learn a second language, which is Hindi. Yes, I agree, Hindi would have some root which is close to Chhattisgarhi, and hence there is receptive understanding of both Chhattisgarhi and Hindi. That does not mean that they become the same and the one language. And hence, categorizing that entire place under Hindi and telling them or giving them education under Chhattisgarhi, under Hindi, is unfair to some extent. Considering a report from 2022, when the chief minister also said that one day in the entire week, these children will be taught in Chhattisgarhi. What about the other 4 days? 5 days rather. Saturday is a bagless day. They don't take their bags to school and rather they are given activities to do. I recently actually visited Chhattisgarh for a project, field project of our students, and hence we have received some fresh insight into this entire happening. Chhattisgarh is still not being used. So how do we expect these students to cope with the entire curriculum if their home language, the language they are so used to, the language they have grown up with, the language they have 100% competence in is not being used in the curriculum? I'll talk about, let's take up an example from the ASER report itself. So in West Bengal, since I am a Bangla speaker, this is something which I am already aware of. So in West Bengal, the ASER report did its survey in Kuch Bihar. Kuch Bihar is a pretty big district, and there are lots of places where at least 7 to 8 different languages are being spoken. In spite of which, there is only one standardized version of Bangla which was considered. When you look at the script which is used there, the pointer which is used in the ASER report for West Bengal's page, you'll notice that that's the version of Bangla being used by people in Kolkata and not in Kuch Bihar. There are certain phonological differences, and even not only phonological, there are morphemic differences, or rather differences in the way the word formation processes are in Kuch Bihar. In spite of which, these children are being judged on the basis of a Bangla which is being spoken 7 to 800 kilometers away in a place like Kolkata. Is that fair? That is another question I must ask. And at the same time, I would also rather I mean to question to some extent if large scale people oriented surveys like ASER report should primarily consider language to be a local phenomenon rather than one language for the entire state. Now, these children who are in Kuch Bihar would probably have not gone to Kolkata or not spoken a version of the language spoken in Kolkata. And if you talk about great linguists, say for example William Labov, 80 kilometers onwards language changes. Where I stay in West Bengal, from there if I go 80 kilometers, language will essentially change to some extent. So think about 700, 800 kilometers. That's like a huge difference. Language has changed a lot. Languages like Rajbongshi, languages like Sadri, languages like Mech, these are all spoken in Kuch Bihar, and yet these children are all everyone taken under the envelope of Bangla, which is also unfair again. Once again, that is just the sociological phenomenon side. Now, if I talk about the curriculum side, which is taken, let's say, from Chomskyan grammar, Chomskyan paradigms. Say, for example, if we take some example from Piaget, from Vygotsky, Brunner, all of these people, they primarily take language to be a localized phenomenon. If you notice any example being taken by any of these people in any of their writings, all of these examples are being taken from a localized phenomenon, or rather a child who is speaking their first language. None of these are taking into account a place where there is a multiplicity of language like India, and all of these multiplicities adding on to, let's say, a multilingual country. And that is where we are leading on to problems with the policy level. Now, I get it. Standardization needs to exist. Without standardization, we cannot have rules which would apply to the entire country. A certain degree of standardization, let's say, like Weber suggested, is needed in every organization which would have more than, let's say, 200, 300 people. We need certain degree of standardization. And a country, nonetheless, a country of, let's say, around 100 crore people, we would definitely need standardization. But it does not mean it would happen at the cost of a language being spoken as the first language. I will quickly just I was writing a paper. I just recently completed a paper, so I want to quote one region from there. India has, on the Ministry of Education page, you will find 1652 languages listed officially. Approximately, it says there is approximately 1652 languages which are officially recognized in India. And these 1652 languages are including all the dialects, all the variants of languages, and yet we have 22 languages on the 8th schedule. What are big book publishers doing? They generally tend to stick with these 22 variants. What do children have to do in schools? Children have to stick with languages which are close to these 22 scheduled languages. For example, like in Kuch Bihar, I just stated an example. For example, Chhattisgarh. Think about Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. They split because of a language. They split because they wanted to have their existence on the basis of a certain language, Telugu. And right now, the entire Telangana state is pushing for English medium schools. Why? Just one generation on. What changed? How come an entire state, entire ideology of people have changed over just one generation? How come everybody is looking for an English medium state? Same is happening with Vivekanand Vidyalaya in Rajasthan. The same thing is happening with Chhattisgarh as Sages School, Atmanand Vidyalaya. Why is this specialized movement suddenly taking up English as a language? What is the problem with local languages? How is it that people are now suddenly starting to realize that choosing a foreign language will probably be easier and feasible to teach the children and standardize text? But rather, if you choose a local language which the child is much more used to speaking, wouldn't it make much more sense? I get it. Now comes the problems with the entire approach. 1652 is just a part of it. When you look at the actual census documentation, it started off by listing more than 5,000 languages. And then it realized, no, this is a part of this language, this is a part of this language. In the process, also coagulating many multiple languages which are standalone languages under many big languages. For example, 54 different languages are taken into the entire belt of Hindi, including languages like Awadhi, Braj, Maithili. These are all mother languages for Hindi and not languages which came out of Hindi. But yet we take them all under Hindi. That's because of, well, a certain group holding power. They can change the entire connotation of the discussion. They can change the entire flow of events. And hence, who is suffering? Children. Children in schools. If we talk about, I'll just quickly end. I suppose I have 1 more minute. Ah, okay.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, okay, okay. So if I sum up the discussion now, the probability is that we probably need to look at the entire recruitment systems where all of these people who are recruited would probably at least know how to speak to the children. We don't need policy level changes so that that language needs to be taught at that school. We don't need that. What we need is someone who understands the language, understands the concepts and the cultural nature of the language being used with the children. That way, even if a third language is being spoken or a second language is being enforced on the children, this person can at least talk to those children in a language which the child understands better. That way, that's one step closer to making these children be interested. High dropout rates, yes, it's bound to happen. If a child doesn't understand anything, a child is bound to drop out at class 6, maybe class 10, or after class 12. They'll find much more better scope in just going to a shop and working. They're earning money, they're understanding how to do the job and doing it in their own local language. Now, language will always be a problem, there is no solution to it. This is just one stop, one probably one step into solving it. Maybe taking people who understand the local language, understand the local connotation, understand the problems they're going through, understand the examples of local economy, understand how the language can be spoken and in what circumstances. That can be one step into it. So I'll end the conversation there. Uh,
Sure. Thank you, Agniva, for those thoughts.